all. I mean, the question we really should be asking is, would Sammy ever have gotten into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame if he wasn't in Van Halen?
Good point.
And the answer is no. So I would dare say that, yes, Van Halen had, just by virtue of the debut album alone, had a slam dunk into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Although I shouldn't say a slam dunk because they didn't get in the first year, if I remember correctly. It took them a couple of years to get in.
Exactly. Letter number 4. Hello, Dave and Dave. Gonna be a little windbaggy on this email. During the segment about the museum exhibit showing Eddie's 78 touring gear, it sounded like there was some confusion as to whether the black and white guitar was the original or a replica. The black and white Frankie and the red black and white Frankie are the same guitar. Eddie took the black pin striping off the Frankenstrat, retaped it, and painted it red around the end of March 1979 because the other guitarists were copying the black and white striped guitar design. He wanted to be different, so he painted the red coat to set himself apart. If you can see a black and white Frankie after 1979, it's a replica. As a side note, the black and yellow guitar was a different guitar. Eddie didn't like it because it sounded too bright, and he went back to the original Frankie. The black and yellow guitar was buried with Dimebag Daryl since he had asked for one before he died. So any black and yellow Frankie you see after Dimebag's funeral would also be a replica. Hope this wasn't too windbaggy, and I agree with the other Dave. David Lee Roth's head is a scary place to go. Devon Miller. Look at that. You got a little something in there for you, Dave. Devon,
I agree.
I would like to see what proof you have, young man. Look, I know that the black and white stripe one in the current Met exhibit is a replica because it's there to represent the time, because I know the gear is authentic, okay, and it just fit the gear of that time. Now, the current Frankie, the red, black, and white stripe Frankie, is the original. I think we went over this last time with Midwest Ron. And Midwest Ron just went to the exhibit, and I'm sure he could back us up on that. And I'm sure he'll write in next month, and he'll straighten your ass out. So what...
like he straightens ours out.
That's right. So, Dave, what do you make of his statement here?
No, good point about the reminder that the red, white, and black one was originally black and white.
Yeah.
So I really don't track Ed's guitars too much.
Right.
About, which is what. I mean, one way or another, they're Ed's guitars. And he played them.
Right.
And we still have to get our butts to that exhibit and check it out.
Yes, absolutely.
From what I've heard from people who have been there, the exhibit is certainly worth seeing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not only for Ed's guitars,
right.
but for the other stuff that's there.
That's what I heard. I heard the same thing. Mm-hmm.
Right? So I'm looking forward to going there and checking it out.
Yep.
But as far as the history of Ed's guitars, man, that's not my strong suit. Mm-hmm. So anybody else who wants to write in and tell us how wrong we are, go right ahead, because you're probably right. We're only using the information that we have in front of us, and then Ron shoots that down and tells us the right answer. So we'll just keep on doing that until we're right, I guess.
Absolutely. And we are on to letter number 5, and it says, "Hi guys, thanks for the great podcast. I've been a listener since the beginning and appreciate how much effort goes into each episode." And he says, "Thank you very much. You hit on something a few episodes ago that struck a chord. Eddie's Esquire interview. One of the things I always loved about Van Halen was the party atmosphere and seeming camaraderie. After the article came out and reading Ed's disdain for Dave, I passed on their show at Red Rocks Amphitheater in Colorado. Are they a disingenuous version of their former self, or were they always some version of that masked by Dave's marketing, or maybe I am missing the mark? Keith Sousa, Colorado." Well, Keith, the interview I think you're referring to is in Billboard magazine, I believe. I think that's the one where Eddie and Dave, never been friends with Dave, all that kinds of shit. We have discussed this before. Eddie and Dave have really never been friends. Eddie and Al are tight brothers who fight and are tight. Okay, that's the way they operate. Michael Anthony is a bystander. Don't get me wrong, he's a talented man, but he's a bystander. Somehow, when you put all this in the blender, it works. The Van Halen formula is Eddie Van Halen, musical genius, guitar god. David Lee Roth, swagger, style, sass, funny, entertaining. Ladies love him. Guys admire him, and he's got a special stylist vocal. And Al, he's an excellent underrated drummer. locked into Eddie's playing tighter than any other drummer could because of their instant bond. Michael Anthony, killer background vocals, solid bass player, and the glue that holds everything together. That's the Van Halen formula. That's what works. Not everybody's in love with each other, but that's what makes the special sound. What do you think, Dave?
I think what happened was those guys have always been the way they are. I just think things got magnified a lot because of fame, because of alcohol, because of drugs, because of egos, because of all that stuff. And it just snowballed. So Dave is homala, babala, zebala, boobala crazy.
Right.
And Ed was never a social butterfly.
Right.
So he just says what's on his mind, and if it's good or bad, that's just the way he is. And so I just think those guys have always been a little bit that way, and it just got worse as time went on, and that's where we are today.
Right.
So I do think in the old days that, there was a little bit of masking going on because, if you were a fan of Van Halen back then, you had no idea any of this stuff was going on. When Van Halen broke up and Dave was out of the band, everybody was in complete shock.
Right.
It wasn't like it was today where the internet was just feeding all sorts of information.
Right.
The band was one big happy family, and they were just the kings of the world, and they were joshing around, and they were buddy, and all that stuff.
Right.
And then it turned out years later, we found out, well, they weren't so buddy after all, and there was all this shenanigans going on. And now we know, hindsight being, 2020, all these years later. So I don't think it's, what's the word he used? I can't even say it.
Disingenuous.
Sure, that's it. Maybe a little bit. It might be a little bit that way. But I just, now that we've seen these guys' true colors, there is a little bit of that going on, and there always was. But like I said, I just think as time went on, it just got worse and worse. And unfortunately, it's led to the drama that is the band today instead of the music as it should be.
Absolutely. And we are on to letter number 6, and this might be the shortest letter we've ever seen, Dave. It's from Savoy, 1984. It doesn't give us a name. It's just this code there. One sentence. What's your favorite way of watching Van Halen at home? That's an interesting question. It's not exactly my favorite, but I use the computer. That's how I watch it, because I can put my earphones on and it doesn't disturb my family, and the chances of me putting it on the flat screen and getting away with blasting Van Halen through the house is not going to happen. So, what about you, Dave?
I really don't watch Van Halen all that much.
All right.
I am more of an audio guy than a video guy.
That's always been the case.
And always have been. So it's very rare where I'm just going to pop in a DVD or something like that. So maybe I'll watch something off of YouTube, but I'd much rather be listening to them than watching them. Yeah,
it's true. Dave usually listens to Van Halen, watches porn. That's usually the way he operates.
It's a great combo, so don't knock it till you've tried it.
That's exactly right. It's like salt and sweet all together. And we are on to letter number 7. And Dave, boy, do you got a special surprise.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird.
It's a plane.
It's
Midwest fucking Ron. And
Ron's nickname gets longer with each episode.
It's incredible. He's got his own bumper now, this guy.
That's right.
Let me tell you, Ron has a trick up his sleeve, and he's aiming an arrow right into your head. Listen
All right,
to
what
this.
do we got?
He has a what if. Now it's time for What If with Dave and Dave. Shit, what if? What if Dave Marconi's favorite segment, What If? What if, motherfucker?
I don't do what ifs.
Oh, this is Midwest Ron's first what if. He says, Dear Dave and Dave, in the deep dive on Van Halen 2, much was made about how Light Up the Sky would have been a much better album opener than You're No Good. So, what if The labels on the LP were switched around to side 2 became side 1 and vice versa. The new running order would be side 1, Light Up the Sky, Spanish Fly, DOA, Women in Love, Beautiful Girls. Side 2, You're No Good, Dance the Night Away, Somebody Get Me a Doctor, Bottoms Up, and Out of Love Again. How does this affect your opinion of the album? Midwest fucking Ron. Just so you know, I add the fucking, he's always Midwest Ron. So this is what I say to this, Mr. Ron. I say, that's not my taste. This is how I would do it. Side 1, Light Up the Sky, Dance the Night Away, Somebody Get Me a Doctor, You're No Good, Bottoms Up. Side 2, Out of Love Again, DOA, Spanish Fly, Women in Love, Beautiful Girls. That's where I stand. What about you?
Well, to answer his question, I think if he did flip the A and the B side, it certainly would be a better album opener and maybe slightly better pacing. It doesn't change my overall opinion of the album. I still think it's a decent album, of course.
Yeah, it's a great album.
But I just think, You're No Good is like on the bottom of my list of Van Halen songs, and I just think it's just like a poor choice of an album opener. I think like when you open the album, you should go in there full tilt boogie, one of my favorite expressions, rock out.
Right.
And You're No Good just doesn't do that.
Yeah. I think that Light Up the Sky should definitely be the opener, and I definitely think that Beautiful Girls should be the closer. Okay, I love Dave's combo that he suggested of putting Spanish Fly before Women in Love. I like that. So I think Dance the Night Away has got to be way further up. So it's got to be at least second song because that's the big hit of the album. Somebody Get Me Doctor is a perfect right in the middle of the sandwich, a solid rocker, Van Halen staple. You're No Good, that's probably the best place to stick that because Bottoms Up is going to rev up and close out the first half. And then Out of Love Again, which is one of my all-time favorites on the album. Rip Roarin' Open Side 2, DOA, another huge favorite of mine. Continue the rockin', and then we go into the slide that Dave created of Spanish Fly into Women in Love and closing with Beautiful Girls. I happen to like that the best. And the good news is, in today's technology, you can do it. You can rearrange it yourself on your Spotify playlist or on your Burn It the Way You Want It or however you want it. Now,
that's all, folks.
Ron even brought in a second letter, Dave, and he just had a little thing here. He says, to Dave and Dave, continued thanks for a great monthly podcast. Despite the occasional inaccuracies that require correction, I look forward...
he's always got to throw in a D.
I look forward to listening as each new cast is released. Van Halen Bash 3 was very enjoyable, with a great set from Romeo Delight. The venue, Daryl's house, was good, and that area of New York is very scenic. Thanks again for being great hosts. Midwest fucking Ron! So he just had a nice little note there, and Ron, we want to thank you so much for coming. It is always a pleasure to see you, and you are always a welcome person on the cast, and it was a lot of fun seeing you there. And Ron Pio was also with him later on in the cast. Dave, what do you make of Ron's kind gesture here?
I tell you, super nice that both Rons come every year to the VH Bash, no matter where it is.
It's incredible. So
super nice, and we can't thank them enough. Great guys to hang out with and talk about Van Halen.
Yes,
so, that's like one of the unintended benefits and pluses of doing this podcast is meeting people like that, meeting fans like that.
Sure,
and it's one of those great things. So, we see those guys every year at VH Bash, and it's just great. Love it. So thank you guys for coming. We really appreciate it.
And a big thank you to Romeo Delight, because those guys are just as nice as well. Ronnie, Joby, and Mike, and Buddy, of course, they're just such great guys, and really, as good as they are at playing Van Halen, they're just as nice a guys. So they're lots of fun.
Totally.
Lots of fun.
Totally.
So we are on to letter number 9 from Paul Davis, and he says, in response to the mailbag question this month, the best use of a Van Halen song in a movie is otherwise pretty forgettable. Mission to Mars from the year 2000. Great work with Dance the Night Away here. It is a song that really stars in this scene, and I hope you'll share it with your listeners. Keep up the great work. And he gives us the YouTube link, and he says, P.S. The West Coast wants a Van Halen Bash 2. Oh, boy. Well, I tell you what.
If the West Coast is willing to pay us to fly out there, and I guess we'll find a West Coast Van Halen tribute band.
Yeah. exactly. Well,
So that won't be hard, right?
That won't be hard. There's plenty of those. That's not the problem, Paul. Well, I want to say thanks. It's a good pull on Dance the Night Away and the Mission to Mars. I love that scene. That's great. Yeah, West Coast Van Halen Bash, that's a budgetary issue. So, so